We are live. So,
Great.
Chynna Thompson, thank you for coming on the show. Everyone, whoever's listening to this, Chynna is a friend of mine who I have met as a student at Youngstown State University. And over the course of my college career, I had a few classes with Chynna, and I had the pleasure to work on a few projects with her and just engage in some very meaningful conversations. And Chynna, one thing I want to tell you is that you have this personality about you that is very outgoing, and you're not afraid to raise your hand in class.
Definitely not.
It's just like, I feel like there have been moments where it was like either you or me, we were the only one raising our hand in class. So
Yeah, that when I was little, it was one thing I always got in trouble for was at like the parent-teacher conference. It was always Chynna talks a little too much. She talks a little too much in class, you know. I never talked out of turn. It was just too much. But I always felt that way too, and I got that vibe from you too, where it was like, man, me and Lewis, we're just going at it with the answers here, and everybody else is just, what are they doing? Are they looking around? Are they paying attention? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And for me, it's just like, I've been thinking about this, and it's just like when you raise your hand, it's a 50% chance that you're going to be wrong. So I think people they're going to take the route of being 100% sure that they're not going to be wrong at all, then raise their hand and engage.
Right. I think that you hit it head on. A lot of students just kind of lack that courage almost to do that. But the whole reason you're in school is to learn. And if you fail, you really haven't failed. You've learned something. You haven't succeeded, but you've learned something. And that's what's important. I would say definitely in any level of schooling, but especially higher education. You know, if you're at a junior college, a 2-year, 4-year program, all the way through a master's degree, PhD even, raise your hand. Don't be afraid to answer or ask that question, because guaranteed there's somebody else in the room too who's having that same thought. They're not sure what the teacher's saying, you know. So if you do it, it's a safer place than the real world, kind of, to make a mistake, because you have a professor that's going to guide you through it, you know.
You know what? That's such a great point. And I always say that the university is one of the safest environments to fail. And it's like you have 4 years to literally fall flat on your face, and your excuse is, I'm a college student.
Right. Yes. That's so true. You know, I mean, I don't want people to take it too lightly so that they just think they can mess up a bunch and it doesn't matter, because that's certainly not your point. I know. But I would have to agree. You know, you can try so many different things in college. You can try different majors. And again, if it's right down to, I'm going to try to answer this question, I might get it wrong. But again, that's okay, because nobody's sitting in that classroom like, wow, she's really like an idiot for doing that, you know? Everybody's kind of like, oh, okay, well, what's the answer? Like, they're waiting for the teacher to respond.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So you go to Youngstown State, you go to YSU, and you go for advertising and public relations, correct?
Correct. And I do have a minor in Spanish.
Oh, nice. So what led you to that path in your education?
Well, in high school, I wanted to take up broadcasting, but I kind of realized it wasn't something that was going to get me to the point that I wanted to get to in life. Honestly, financially, it's not the best paying job. And I also wasn't entirely interested in journalism, but more so just being in front of a camera and talking. You know, I do like storytelling though. I love, being able to share things with people and express myself, and even express very factual things with my own twist. So I chose advertising and public relations because it had that PR piece to it, and I thought that sounds like something that I could really get into. Further down the road, I kind of decided I want to get into event planning. Doing the Disney College program is really what sparked my interest in that. So when I came back from that 6-month experience, I decided to kind of work in jobs that would lead me to gain more experience for event planning. And hopefully after graduation, that's what I can get into. The Spanish piece, I went to a private school growing up, 1st through 8th grade, and we were fortunate enough to have Spanish education from 1st through 4th grade. It stopped at 4th grade because our Spanish teacher moved on to pursue her medical degree, I believe. So in high school, I just thought it's only natural that I pick up Spanish because I still know some of it. I had a couple family members who are fluent as well, and my sister did it too, so I thought, why not? And again, my sister went to college 2 years before me, chose that as a minor, and I said, you know, I'm very comfortable with the language and everything, always got high marks in school for it, so I said, I'm going to continue on and become as fluent as I can and take it on as a minor.
Does studying another language, does it bring out some interesting ideas or aspects of your own language in English? Do you tie any of that together?
It certainly does. Spanish is one of those languages that occasionally you come across a word that you know is Spanish in origin. Taco, empanada, you know, those are Spanish words. But there's some words that you wouldn't think that they come from Spanish, but like tornado is a Spanish rooted word. Of course, Latin first, then into more Spanish, and then into English. But that's just one small example. Before last semester, it wasn't as much. It wasn't broadening my mind as much because it was really basically just your straight grammar classes and vocabulary and really learning the fundamentals of the language. But I recently had a pronunciation class where you learn everything about how we as humans form words and communicate. And it was mind-blowing. And there was those moments where it was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense now. Like that the words we say, how we say them, whether it's in English or Spanish, it clicked. So I think once you get into a little higher level, yes, it definitely does bring out a lot of different aspects of your own language that you might not even realize.
I unfortunately, I've probably spent 5 years studying Spanish and I don't know anything about it. Like I took like 3 years of Spanish in high school, barely got through Spanish in college. So it is what it is, but I appreciate it. I appreciate language in general, and I respect people that are bilingual and are interested in other cultures. So that's very impressive.
Thanks.
So PR, I've been like doing a lot of studying and working on some projects when it comes to sales and marketing. And PR was always, I always carried these misconceptions about PR before I took a PR class by Michael Ponticus. And it just, having that class with him brought to light some of the misconceptions that I had. And I just wanted to hear your take. When you're talking with people, it could be peers in class, or it could just be people in general. What are some of the misconceptions that you come across when it comes to PR?
I think one of the biggest ones, and I had this misconception myself as well, that PR is 100% behind the scenes for the PR rep, the public relations representative. They write everything down for you. They tell you what to say, and then they give it to the CEO of a company to make the speech, or they give it to the celebrity to put out there. But there is an aspect to PR that is more public, if you will, and that is in the event planning side. Event planning for a firm, it can be very promotional. So that is like the aspect of PR that I'm very interested in. but I wouldn't have been interested in it if I didn't know it existed. And the same as you, I took that class with Michael Ponticus, and while we did study a lot of cases regarding your typical thoughts of what PR are, there were the few stories about, you know, the big events that go on and everything like that that are related to people who work in PR.
So going back to Ponticus, I know that he was heading up the YSU Ads Club. Are you involved with that anyway?
I have been in the past. I don't want to say I've been fully involved. I would have liked to have been, but I had other commitments in other student organizations that I needed to make sure I was fulfilling first. But I can tell you what Ads Club does if that's what you're interested in.
Well, no, hey, if because I did some research, looked at your LinkedIn page, and it says here that you're part of American Ad Federation. Was that one of the obligations that kind of took time away from Ads Club or whatever?
No, it wasn't. It was something, it actually comes with being an Ads Club. So being an Ads Club at YSU, you pay your dues, and those dues go to various things, one of them being a membership in the American Advertising Federation. And what's really cool is every year they do a case, and they're given a company. This past year it was Snapple, and the team did amazing work, presented really awesome. They came up with a whole new advertising campaign to sell Snapple more so in the West. It's not as popular in the West. So the whole point was to get it popular in the West. So I've seen it kind of from the outside looking in. I've been a part of a few projects, but nothing as much as some of the other members. They were there for it, 100% of the time.
Yeah, for sure. And then also on LinkedIn, it says that you're part of Delta Zeta.
Yes, I am a very proud Delta Zeta at Youngstown State. Currently, I am the Vice President of Programs. So I basically run the calendar. I make sure that we aren't over-programming, so our girls are not stressed out about, choosing school over sorority, because the fact is that's never a choice. It's always school. Something actually that's not on my LinkedIn, which I did notice earlier this week, is my membership in Penguin Productions. And I think that is a very large part of my involvement at YSU, that especially that's career related.
Mm-hmm. So Penguin Productions, that's like the media side of things?
Somewhat, yes. Penguin Productions is a group of students who every year we put on 2 major events, one in the fall and one in the spring, for YSU students and the public. And throughout the year, we have what we call the concert series. So once a month, we'll have a smaller band in a venue around downtown Youngstown or campus. And the point of it is to expand the music tastes of everybody and anybody on campus, but also to cater to the various music tastes, and expand people's knowledge of the city a little bit. If a band that you might have heard of is playing at a bar or a restaurant that you didn't hear of, you might be inclined to go see them because you like them. And so it's going to get you out and get you there, and to have a good time. The 2 larger events are really what I love. I live for those. We have different positions that everybody takes a part in planning, all the way from, ordering the stage to get set up and ordering porta potties to be delivered, to choosing the artists and to, booking the venues downtown if we need those. And it's all student led, which is to me the most interesting aspect of it. These community members that see us, they really have a certain respect for us because they kind of look at us originally as just these kids, these college kids. But when we come in there, we're like, hi, we're from Penguin Productions. We would love to partner with you, and we start using what we've learned in our Penguin Productions orientation to kind of exude this professionalism that people don't expect. And I think that it's a great opportunity for anybody who loves music, who loves event planning, and who just really wants to be involved.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. That sounds really interesting. And speaking of involvement, that's why I'm just so thankful that you took the time to come on the show, because you're always engaging and you're always involved and you're always doing extracurricular stuff. What made you want to do all this extra stuff on campus?
I think it was mostly that I was fortunate enough to be afforded with the time to do so. Um, and again, that's something that is changing a little bit right now, even as I go into my senior year. I know that my professors are expecting more of me. My parents are expecting more of me. So it's, it's going to be you have to find a balance. But I've always just been a very busy-minded person. And I think that in order for me to channel a lot of my energy, I have to put it into projects like those. And it has to be things that especially hold my interest. And again, with my personality type, like you mentioned in the beginning, I just love the involvement, really. I love, honestly, like the camaraderie of the groups I'm in. And I think it's really cool to be able to say, I brought, I helped bring Zella Day to perform at Youngstown State University, somebody who's been, at really awesome music festivals around the country. She's toured overseas as well. Or even my sorority, it's just something that's a bigger piece, of myself. I like to just, and I like to have the experiences because I like to share them with other people too.
Yeah, so I mean, and it sounds, you said you got to find that balance, and it's definitely a juggling act. So for freshmen coming into YSU, what are some tips, some tools of the trade that you could give to them?
Before I answer your question, I would just like to say that that was such an incredible segue. That was really great, actually, because I know before we got on here, we said we're going to talk about these main points, and that was such a perfect segue. But some freshman advice, especially about balancing things, is just to make sure that you are keeping in perspective what is really important. While being a student is extremely important, that is number one while you're in college, because that's what you're spending all that money for, or your parents are spending all that money for. And your student organizations are a lot of fun. Recently, I've come to the senses a little bit more, so that taking care of your personal life, yourself, your health, taking care of your health is very important, and taking care of your environment, making sure that things are nice and clean, things look nice and presentable. It's important because if all that stuff isn't done, it doesn't really feel good, and it might be weighing on your mind more. So when you're at peace with your environment and you feel healthy and everything, that I think would be the number one thing to keep in mind. While a lot of people talk about this college lifestyle of up all night and living on coffee and like bagels, it's true to a point, but you really can't live and thrive off of that. You can't achieve the grades you want or the commitment level you want in your student organizations without really properly taking care of the very basic important things first.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that you said was perspective. And my second to last semester, I had one more science course that I needed to take, and I signed up for an astronomy class. And the first day of class, the professor said that we were going to talk about some stuff that was going to melt our minds. And he was right. I'm not a huge science guy. I like more of the marketing and the communications and the business side of things. But this class, it just talked about like the scale of the universe and looking at the complexity of life itself and the complexity of what we live in. Really put class into perspective for me, because I was one of those people that every single grade would affect me personally. And just just having that class, and I know other people have different classes that mean different things to them, but that class for me really helped me put things in perspective. And what it brought to me was, you know, when you're looking at the complexity of everything and you're looking at the scale of everything, the only thing that I can worry about is what I have in my control. And that would be things like my environment, making sure everything is organized and ready to go, making sure that I'm prepared, but then also making sure that I'm treating myself, not being too hard on myself, and giving myself a pat on the back for being a contribution, because that's under my control. I may be working with a group, and we could get a failing grade on a project, which I've never had that experience at YSU. But if that were the case, I can look at my own contribution and look at and make that the level of judgment for me. Did I contribute? Was I engaged? Was I involved to the point where I know I did with what I could with what I had?
That is a really awesome point too. Basically, like you said, just what is in your control. Make sure you take advantage of controlling it, because there's so many things outside your control that I think people waste a lot of time worrying about, and they forget that in fact what is it within their control. So they let those things fall to the wayside, and they work so hard toward controlling these other things that they really probably will never achieve to be in control of. And there's just so much right in front of you that is so important to be paying attention to while you're growing.
Amen. And one of the things that being in sales has taught me is that there's things that are out of your control. And one of those things is the decision that the customer is going to make. I can present all the best information I can to them, and I can give the best customer service possible, but it's ultimately in their control to make that decision to say, I'm going to pull out my credit card and I'm going to buy what you're selling. So with that being said, that brings me to my next point. When it comes to business, when it comes to startups, you're operating in that realm right now when it comes to the Youngstown Incubator and ACES. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Since May, I've been employed with ACES 180, and it's a portfolio company at the Youngstown Business Incubator. And the main product is software that is used by advisors and professors and coaches for student athletes. So brief kind of overview is, if an athlete comes into your school, is taking so many classes, if they fail a class, or they're getting toward failing a class, their GPA is going under, kind of a deal, they will fall out of academic eligibility. And academic eligibility is something set forth by the NCAA. If an athlete falls out of academic eligibility, but the coaches and advisors and professors don't realize it and don't catch it soon enough, that athlete could be out on the field. And if that happens, they will be fined. And these fines are no joke. These are hefty fines that the NCAA will impose on schools for academic ineligibility, academic fraud. So fortunately, YSU has used the system a little bit, and we're in the process, like you said, of those sales. And right now, what my part at ACES mainly has been is to organize an email campaign, come up with a good message, and I'm working the whole time with the founder of the company. He doesn't like me to call him my boss. It's a very laid back environment, but working together to deliver that message that your student athletes are probably pretty great. They're talented and wonderful, but why don't we do all that we can to help them? And this program uses real-time information, and that is the key with it. A lot of other programs seem to lack that function, whereas if a professor, puts a grade in that they failed a test, or that they maybe have been out of class for the past 3 days with no excuse, it will alert their advisor, and then their advisor will alert their coaches and let them know, hey, this athlete's kind of not been around, things are happening. They call that athlete in, and they address the problem right then and there, because it is so important to keep them in school, because again, that's the main thing they're there for, is school. So in that, it's been kind of a roller coaster with these sales and everything, where you have to find the perfect timing to email all these schools, because their schedules are really different than you might think, especially like the athletic people and, the athletic advisors, the athletic directors, all of that. So it's really like, if I could equate it to anything, it is like that game at, Dave & Buster's, any arcade really, Chuck E. Cheese, where there's like a wheel spinning and there's another wheel spinning in front of that wheel, and they have holes in the wheels and there's holes behind them. I'm so sorry that the phone is ringing.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyways,
you might have a real-time guest call in.
yeah, I know. It's actually a number I don't recognize. But so the wheels are spinning, and you have to drop the coin through and time it perfectly so it goes through each slot and then the hole behind those spinning wheels. It's really it's a juggle, but it's fun. It's a learning experience, if anything.
That's a very unique software, and it's just like, it's one of those ideas that you hear and it's like, well, oh, why didn't I think of that? Mm-hmm. And it just not only is it a great idea and it's beneficial for the athletic departments and the athletic teams, this could really make a big impact on these students' lives, making sure that they're doing what they need to do when it comes to their academics, because that's going to help them whether they go to the next level or not.
Right. And you mentioned the uniqueness of the software. It's interesting because 2 weeks into the internship there, it kind of took this crazy turn where we were approached with an idea. Somebody had a problem and they said, maybe you can fix this, to the founder of ACES. So in the time that I have been there, I have pretty much helped found a second company with this gentleman. And it is a software that is used for honor students, because they are another cohort of students that have certain expectations and certain requirements that they have to keep up for certain scholarships and things like that. So in that, if you're looking for any kind of real world experience, I would say that going to the business incubator, you got a really good chance of running into some, really like meat and potatoes stuff there. It's been, like I said, a crazy roller coaster of a ride, but such an incredible learning experience.
Yeah, for sure. And, Jim Kosler, the CEO there, he told me something that you alluded to earlier, but he was talking about entrepreneurship. He said, there's no such thing as failure in entrepreneurship. There's either you succeed or you learn.
Yeah, actually, that's, again, that working there with him, taking his class, Startup 101, it is something that is kind of radiated throughout the business incubator. So I think all of us that work there, and even people that he's come in contact with who aren't there, such as yourself, it's definitely a phrase that sticks. I think it can be applied to a lot of things in life too.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you're talking about this software, it sounds super unique. It sounds very useful and meaningful, but at the same time, you're talking about the meat and potatoes and some of the day-to-day grind. So from that, what I'm hearing is you're not getting a yes to every proposal you're sending out. Is that correct?
Oh, God, far from it. Yes, no. And anybody who may be listening or hears this who also works sort of in sales, I never would have said, oh, sure, I work in sales, but it can equate to that. And I'm sure you know this feeling too, that it is way more no's or way more I'll get back to you about it than anything. It all comes down to the resources that the people have that you're trying to sell to, as well as the need. I mean, we have done research on both sides of the company and found that there is a substantial need for the products that we're providing. But again, it's those resources, and it's whether or not the people in control can see the value in it. So as salespeople, that is our job, is to translate the core value of what, you know, our product is. And that's not something that's easy to do.
Yeah, for
especially
sure.
because you've got these people who they have these walls built up for salespeople, and they're ready to just say no 100%. So you've really got to have a good point to your spiel or whatever it is that you do to make them at least think, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to you can't get from no to yes without getting to maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's very interesting because, you know, if I'm an athletic director or if I'm in a school system and I hear about the software, I'm going to be interested in it. It kind of seems like a no-brainer if you have the resources and if you're a decision maker. But at the same time, like you said, you're going to hear a lot of no's, a lot of I'll get back to you, and it takes more people than you think to say yes. And one of the things that Jim talks about in his Startup 101 is the capture phase. So you have the funnel, and there's different sales and business funnels that people have. And looking at the top of it is that visibility, making sure people see what you do and who you are. And then the engagement, being able to engage with prospects and look at that need and potentially express how you solve that need. And then at the end of the funnel, the most narrow part of the funnel is the capture stage. That stage where people are enrolled in what you're selling and they're ready to pay for it. And to get that momentum, to get someone to start moving in that direction towards the capture phase, it's immensely difficult, and it's an art form.
It certainly is. Yes. I couldn't have said it better myself, really. It really is like just, you know, putting all your force on this boulder and trying to get it going. But sometimes it's timing. Other times it might just be like the perfect phrase or something that really gets you to that capture stage. But whatever it is, you certainly just can't give up because there will be times that I know probably all entrepreneurs have thought, what am I doing? This is pointless. Like I can't really do this anymore. But for me, somebody who I'm in a very safe environment with it. I'm certainly not the entrepreneur in the situation. I am just I'm helping a lot with a lot of the decisions and the designs and what it looks like and what it does. But at the same time, you know, there has never been a point where the founder, he has said, you know, this is hard and I don't think we should continue pursuing this. It's a waste of time. Nothing like that. And I don't think he ever would, especially being at the business incubator. That's just not the spirit there, certainly.
Definitely, for sure. So would you consider yourself, well, you're definitely entrepreneur spirited and you have that drive with you, but would you consider yourself someone that has the character that one day you are going to be the one that says, I'm going to jump out of the nest and, you know, either spread my wings and fly or hit the ground trying?
Yes, I certainly do believe that. And I would say that a lot of it comes from my dad. He has been a small business owner my entire life and done well with it. So I think that seeing him put in all the work he has, all the hours, you know, people have this misconception about it sometimes, I think, owning a business, and they don't realize that the business owner is the one who's there I mean, all the time, always. So I definitely can see myself if, you know, in the future I gain enough experience, maybe working within a company with event planning, I would, you know, love to branch out on my own. And I've even had the thoughts cross my mind once in a while, like, you know, maybe once I'm older and I'm getting to the point where, you know, maybe the events, it's too much for me to do, or if I've lost interest. I've always loved to bake, actually. And I would love to start a bakery, you know, possibly right even in downtown Youngstown if I'm in the area, because there's not really one in downtown Youngstown. There's Plaza Donuts, but that's only donuts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I even, you know, things like that I think they are difficult, but I definitely think that I have the what's the word? The drive for it, certainly.
And I think it kind of goes full circle. It goes full circle what you were saying earlier about being a student and being prepared and making sure that you're taking care of yourself first and not living off of fast food or whatever, because that's just not sustainable as a business owner or as an entrepreneur who needs to be there around the clock. And he needs to be accountable at all times. So he or she, I should say. And it's just like being sleep deprived and not exercising and not being healthy and being unorganized sometimes can be glorified, but the margin for error as an entrepreneur is super small. So those things just make failure that much more inevitable if you're not taking care of them.
Yes, very, very great point there. I love what you said about that entrepreneurship, the margin of error, it's just barely there, because a lot of people, you know, that is their livelihood. And that's why I think it's such a scary thing. But again, that's why you want to say when you start, be as prepared as you can be. I certainly have learned in my time at the business incubator that you can try to be as prepared as you want, but you just never get, or you never know what kind of, you know, pitch is going to be thrown at you. You don't know what's coming next. And, but if you try to plan for it as much as you can, you know, at least pad yourself a little bit, you know, making sure, like you said, you get enough sleep, you're healthy. All those things they'll put you in the running, at least. They'll get you started. Because without that, again, you know, if you come into work one morning, you know, you're trying so hard to branch out on your own, something like that, your peers see you and maybe you're, you know, looking a little like downtrodden, or, you know, not the best. You're maybe double fisting your lattes in you know, whatever. They're going to see that you're putting in work, but I think that it's also, you know, almost similar to animals in the wild. If they see somebody that's weak, they're probably going to take you out a little bit. They're going to look at you and think, I don't know if they're going to fare so well. Humans definitely, I think, especially in the environments that I've been in, are more willing to put their arm around you and say, come on, maybe let's get you some sleep and help you out. But there are going to be those people who are just going to be like, let them go because it's less competition for me. You have to keep yourself competitive for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, we talked about how there's no such thing as failure. There's either success or learning, and you're going to learn either way. And we talked about YSU, and I know how involved you are at YSU, and we've worked on projects together, and we take education seriously. However, do you think that entrepreneurship can be taught in a classroom setting?
No, sir. 100% no. I think that the concept of entrepreneurship can be taught in a classroom. You can certainly learn a definition, and you can certainly learn steps on how to get yourself started. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because just today we had 2 guests in our office who are also Youngstown State students. And when my boss and I were talking. We said, what are we going to have them do? We have them for an hour. So we have, kind of like a meeting almost with them. And I came up with the idea. I said, why don't we, in order to tell our story in a creative way, let's make a list of all the things we've done from the very start of the business relating to the honors software, from the very start, and list everything we've done so far in the correct order. And I'll write it on sticky notes. So each sticky note was a different step. And we put them up on the wall in a mixed up fashion. And we told these 2 YSU students, MONUS fellowship students as well at the Youngstown Business Incubator, based on what you know of starting a business, put these sticky notes in the right order. How do you think we started this second company? And it was a lot of fun to watch them because, they're slowing down, they're grouping them, they're putting them in the line after they group them. And finally they stepped back and they're like, okay, we're done. And I went over and I'm looking and I'm like, you guys did pretty good. And what you did, the order makes sense, but here's how it really went. And I started the one line of sticky notes I left, and I took the other line of them and I put them directly underneath the one line, just so they could really see the contrast. And they were like, wow, like it was a very unconventional way that we did things. But it's working for us. It's certainly working for us. And we're very proud of that fact as well. My boss, he's a wonderful coder. He's very talented at what he does. So that kind of gave us a leg up, I think, because it is software based. We didn't have to outsource our idea. So that alone really changed the order of those sticky notes. And, it was until, like later on today when my boss and I were talking about it more, I didn't realize what a cool idea it was, that we did that with them. But now we have it up on the wall and it's permanent. And we want everybody who comes into our office to like play the little game, because it is what will show you, true entrepreneurship, that it is up a hill, back down a hill, around a corner, and just through a tunnel, like any kind of loop, twist, and turn you could think of. I think that you really have to get out there, whether you're working for an entrepreneur or you are attempting entrepreneurism yourself. That is how you learn.
I think that's so awesome. In that scenario with the sticky notes, that's very unique. And like you said, the path in entrepreneurship, it's up, it's down, it's around, it's all over the place. And we have this idea for some reason in our head that some of the successful people like the Steve Jobs of the world or the Mark Cubans of the world, that their path to success was just linear. Like it was just like one thing after another and it was just straight up. When to me, the way I look at it, even though I don't consider myself in that ballpark of that type of business tycoons, but if I ever got to that point, I don't want that to be the story. I want to go on the speaker circuit at age like 70 years old as a business veteran, and I want to have a good story of how I went through the dirt, how I went through the mud, how I have battle wounds, and I feel like that just makes for a more interesting book when I go to write about it and go speak about it.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's nothing worse than a predictable story. And if that's what you have, unfortunately, you might not be that interesting of a speaker. I think, though, again, just to reiterate about learning entrepreneurism in the classroom, you can learn, you can listen to any presentation, you can listen to those speakers talk about, having to crawl through the mud and get back up on that horse and keep going. And you can definitely probably empathize with them, but until you really experience it, it's really not comparable. And I never looked at it that way before, but for my dad's business, there was a time when it was very low and it was looking like real bad. Things were not going well, and but him and my stepmom were able to really pick up those pieces and develop the business again into a very thriving thing. And to see them do that, I think that also helps my entrepreneurial spirit, because it was right before my eyes growing up the whole time, the hours they spent there, you know, and talking to my sister and I about it, like, you know, we have to be there because we're trying to fix things and make it better. And as slowly it happened, you know, it's like we went from kind of like, you know, things down at the shop, I don't know, to things are going pretty good. You know, we're having a good year, you know, and I've heard those fluctuations, you know, throughout my life and everything. So I think that really surrounding yourself in it is how you learn.
That's awesome. Yeah. Surrounding yourself is how you learn. One of the, have you ever heard of Seth Godin, the marketer?
It sounds familiar, but I don't want to entirely say yes.
Yeah. Seth Godin is he's written like 18 books on business and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stories that he always talks about is how he was teaching a college course. And I want to say, I mean, it was like a college that was like an Ivy League school or something like that. This was like a well-known university. And
Mm-hmm.
he goes in and like the first day of class, he brings in a stack of magazines and he lays it out across all of the tables. And he goes, okay, everyone take out your phone. And everyone takes out their phone. And he says, okay, I want you to call 100 people and try to sell them the magazine in front of you. If you do it, you get an A. If you just call the 100 people, you get an A. If you don't do it, if you don't call anyone, you automatically fail. And he said over 50% of the class took a failing grade. And I know that in entrepreneurship, there's a lot more that goes into it than just sales. There's the accounting, there's the management, there's the system, there's the processes and things like that. But when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a business owner, you're the number one salesman. If you're not selling what you have to offer, no one's gonna buy it from anyone else on your team, because your team's not gonna buy it. So it's very interesting, and I've brought up that story to some of my friends who spent a lot of money at other business schools, and I tell them that story, and I say, now what if I gave you the phone? Would you be willing to call these people? And they're like, no, I don't want to do that.
I think it definitely takes a certain type of person. Actually, I started at the business incubator making those calls, those cold calls. And interestingly enough, you know, I think it was a really great test, because I was doing it for other companies, and it wasn't really a company I was working for. They just needed someone to do it, to give the survey over the phone kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I was like, you know, I'm sick of being hung up on. I don't want to keep going. But I knew it as part of the job. I had to get through the list. So I just did it. Again, though, I think it comes from a personality type where you're not afraid to just say, hey, you know, I'm a student looking to help a local entrepreneur, and can you give me a few minutes of your time? I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And after a few phone calls, you kind of get the ropes a little. But I certainly would not have taken that failing grade. I don't know if I have 100 contacts. I think I do. But even if I didn't, I might even just look to call businesses just to get the call out so I could get the grade.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And for the first 6 months of me being an insurance agent, I made thousands of calls, and I probably got 10 quotes out of them in like one sale. And I say that because cold calling in today's world is, in my opinion, it's ineffective. Even though it's taught me a lot, it's an ineffective marketing practice, because it's interrupting people. But at the same time, like you said, you can figure out what you can say. So instead of calling someone and saying, hey, do you have 5 minutes for me to ask you a few questions? You could change it around a little bit and say, hey, I'm a student at YSU, and I'm working on this project, and I'm trying to learn a little bit more. Do you have a few minutes to ask you some questions? You know, that whole conversation is less interrupting. So, yeah.
I think people are always a little more sympathetic to maybe a student as well. So it does kind of help, on your end. And, maybe one more thing to throw in there to those freshmen, those prospective freshmen, that if you're in a class and you have to do a project about something, and you're going to be doing projects, you're going to be writing papers about topics that they'll probably interest you a little bit at least. Some of them may not, but don't be afraid to, if your paper is related to, business in some manner, or let's say it's related to, restaurant ownership or even social work, whatever it is you're writing about, don't be afraid to reach out to, your community and ask these, restaurants, these, local owners of restaurants, chefs, local business owners, whoever you can get in touch with, reach out and say, I'm writing a paper, and, I would love to hear what your perspective, on this field is. And again, it's all in the way you word it. If you make that other person kind of feel valued, like they want to hear my opinion, really? Okay, well, sure. Yeah, I got 5 minutes. Let me tell you what I think. People always want to tell you what they think.
Oh, amen. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that is that's a perfect lesson to wrap up this episode on, Chynna. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you for inviting me. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to ask you, if you're comfortable with throwing this out, if someone has listened to this point, has gotten this far, definitely, sees value in some of your thoughts and ideas. Do you feel comfortable enough of throwing out like your Twitter handle, or, where can people find you and connect with you at?
Sure. My Twitter handle is my name. Actually, it's at Chynna Out Loud. It's spelled a little differently. It's CHYNNA_OUTLOUDD. So it's, like out loud, and I think that kind of helps my personality a little bit. If, you were interested in anything I said today, go ahead and, give me a follow and see if you maybe can't learn a thing or two. And, I am always open to following other new people and learning from them as well.
Awesome. Well, Chynna, thank you so much. I've learned a lot from this conversation. Hopefully we can have you on sometime in the future, because I know things are always changing, not only with school, but also with your work with the incubator. So hopefully in the future we can do this again and, talk some creative business ideas.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
For sure. And I'm going to let you know when this is up and live, okay?
Perfect.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.